And the first thing we're going to talk about is the economy. As mentioned, we have a workforce and a growth crisis in this state. We're now in a position where some of our best companies in Pulaski County and across our state can't find workers because we're paying people to stay at home instead of getting them back to work. We need to stop rewarding that. We need to start taking care of the working poor. Those that are working 2 jobs to make ends meet should still get a benefit instead of paying people to sit at home when they're able-bodied. So if you're able-bodied in Kentucky and Alan Keck's the governor, you're going to go to work. The second part of our economic plan is, again, everything, you can't pay your bills if you don't grow. And we're living in an inflationary period. And look, I think a lot of the policies of Governor Beshear and President Biden are terrible. And many of my friends in this race will agree with that. But that alone is not enough. But we've got a growth crisis. The second slowest decade in 100 years. You all love this Commonwealth. You all love this place like I do. Why are we not growing faster? Why are we continually getting our butts kicked by our neighbors? And so I think we have to do more to tell our story, to be proud of who we are. Somerset in the last decade grew at twice the rate the rest of the state did. What would Kentucky look like if 40 other communities were growing and doing what this community has done over the last several years? I think it would be dramatic. To any of my legislative friends in here, thank you for the work that you've done on tax reform. I think anything that we can do to speed up getting to zero income tax will make us more competitive and will allow us to grow much, much faster. So for those of you that have pushed tax reform in this state, thank you. I think that's critical, and I think that we need to speed that up the best we can. The other thing is we need to look at things like child care incentives to allow working families to get back to work quicker. You shouldn't have to choose between continuing your career and finding a place for your child to be watched during the day. And there are ways we can get creative, working with people like the State Chamber to ensure that if you want to go to work, you're going to have the opportunity to get to do that. All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Kentucky, if you will, tonight. I appreciate those who are tuning in. Sorry we're getting off to a little bit of a later jump than normal. I had intended to start 20, 30 minutes ago and got home. Tonight was a special night in Somerset and Pulaski. And so I hung around the house for a few extra minutes to read to them. Gosh, I think one was Million, Billion, Trillions. That was Olson's. And then Oakley's in a Junie B face. We read a little bit about Junie B. But I got to snuggle with them for a little bit, help Mama put them to bed, and then getting ready for the live. So we're excited to answer your questions tonight. We're going to continue to try to stay disciplined, if you will, and answer the questions that come to Keck. There's one particular question tonight that hits really personally. There was a personal story mentioned that I don't think is quite fair to air publicly. It involved the death of a friend and the death of a brother, of a great friend. And so I'm going to be sensitive to that, but we aren't going to duck questions. We're going to answer the tough questions. Again, by the end of this race, you will know exactly where I stand on the issues. I love it when we can focus on issues that are direct to Kentucky, that might be focused on our challenges of the past or where we can potentially go. But I also think it's important to answer questions where you can understand some of my philosophies as a person, as a family man, as a governmental leader, as a businessman. And so I think that it's really paramount that that citizens demand this of the candidates. You know, you should be able to know where we stand. And so we're proud of that. We're going to keep doing it. I want you to keep sending questions to Keck for Kentucky.
and we're going to make sure that we get to all of them. I might take a couple live. I love the interaction. You know, when we first started doing this, I love getting to hear directly from people, doing it live. But also, again, I think it's just important that we cover them all, that I don't miss them. Sometimes when this gets going, the questions get flooded in, and it's hard to get to all of them. And so I think this is the most effective way. You know, we opened tonight with one of our pillars. That clip came from our announcement speech, and we talked about the economy. Now, you're going to hear me talk a lot about the economy over the next several months and year. We've got a workforce crisis. Some of our best employers still can't find people. And, you know, that's a direct result of failed policy and failed leadership for a long time, and specifically over the last several years. We also have a growth crisis. Kentucky just had our second slowest decade of growth in 100 years. We're not growing fast enough, which means we don't have enough people to fill these jobs. We don't have enough people paying taxes into our tax base. And then so if we're not growing and the people that are here aren't working like they should, it creates some real challenges. Which is why we've been as low as 48th in fiscal stability in America, and a neighbor like Tennessee is third. That's another reason you're going to hear me talk a lot about tax reform. I'm thankful to my friends in the legislature who passed some tax reform to get us to zero. I think that we can ramp that up, speed it up, and I hope that as governor I could work alongside of them and get that done and really get Kentucky on this rocket ship of growth and prosperity. But I want to start. I want to dive into some of these questions. I appreciate all who are tuned in and taking some time on your Thursday night to join us. And this question has been asked a lot. I've answered it publicly. I've already answered it to the media. I'm going to stay consistent on it. What I will tell you is that I'm going to answer it in a way that, as I understand things now and my positions now, these are issues that I think we need to continue to research and study. But the question came in from Jordan M., and he said, as governor, would you be in support of bills related to sports gambling or gaming and medical marijuana? And, you know, those are two initiatives that I recognize can be really controversial, that some folks have some deep-rooted personal convictions against them. But as I said to some statewide press about medical marijuana, and the folks that I have talked to, and I have talked to seniors that are dealing with glaucoma and pain. I have spoken to the parents of kids who struggle with seizures, and I've spoken to veterans, war heroes who battle things like insomnia, PTSD, anxiety from their time of service in war. And medical marijuana has helped them. And so, my position is that we should have it in Kentucky. 37 states do. Like so many things, we're late to the game. But it does need to be regulated. We need to ensure that it's not just a free pass and that it doesn't lead to robust recreational use. I don't support the passage of recreational marijuana, but I am fully supportive of a properly regulated medical marijuana. And then as far as sports gaming goes, this is an issue where a lot of conservatives want to try to, toe a line or speak to a specific base, but the level of hypocrisy in it for Kentucky, for me, is just too much. We have wagering on horse racing, which we celebrate. We passed the lottery to help our education funds. And then now, a few years ago, we passed HHR, which historical horse racing machines, in a way to justify it. And that's a slot machine. We see these gaming facilities called the Mint, and, those slot machines. So if we're going to have all that, and then you can't celebrate Kentucky-Louisville with a small wager on a game, it just seems hypocritical. And so I am in favor of it. I think that we could take that money and invest it in our schools, invest it in our teachers. I would love to see that money go towards things like school safety measures, and I think it could really help. I did see somebody comment on the audio. I don't know if it was theirs or I think we're okay, but if the audio is not coming through clear, make sure somebody sends another message. But if it is good, let's just keep rocking. So those are my stances there. Again, if new research comes out or I learn something, I'll own it and say, hey, I've got new data and I'm going to change my opinion. And until that happens, look, I answered those transparently. I'm going to continue to answer them in the proper manner. The next question, I think, is a little bit it's more local focused, but I'm going to address it because inevitably it's going to keep coming up. So early in my administration, we had an opportunity to utilize some of our existing infrastructure and facilities to accept a poor audio. So I'm going to
I wonder if it could be my phone or... I appreciate the feedback, folks. Hang in here with me. We're going to try to get it dialed in. Audio gets bad when switched away from the head-on view. Test, test, test. Let's see how we got it going. Now it's reverbing. Apologize. We've done a bunch of these in here. Something about the angle's messing with it. Front camera has the echo. Okay, well, we're going to keep going. I'm going to do my best. Some are saying it's fine. Some are saying it's not. It's good now. Okay, here we go. So we started accepting a product called leachate. And essentially, leachate is it's rainwater that touches landfills. I don't think the weeds on it at this point are important because leachate from all over the state goes to wastewater treatment facilities. We're not unique. In most major areas that have sewer treatment plants, they take it. It's another area where the training that we have, as a mayor, where you're dealing with infrastructure and public safety and economic development, it prepares you for this job, quite frankly. I mean, I don't know, especially married with the private sector experience I have, but doing the job as mayor, go talk to a mayor about the issues they deal with. They're so similar to what you may face as governor. It's just not to the same scale. But so with that, the question then is, it's less of a question, more of a statement or accusation, but about our drinking water. We have some of the finest facilities and infrastructure in the state. Our water is abundantly clean. I've answered this question a bunch, but it got cemented to Keck for Kentucky, and so I wanted to address it again. My kids drink the water. I drink the water. We're proud of our facilities. In fact, there was a statewide taste test, if you will, and I think a couple dozen communities or so submitted their water. Ours came in third in the state for taste. So we're proud of Lake Cumberland. We had a record year in tourism by over $10 million. We're booming here in Somerset and Pulaski County, and the people that live here know it. There's some that are trying to make issue with it, in my opinion, largely for political gain. Next question comes in from Tyler C. He says, what's your plan to improve Kentucky's ranking among the best states for veterans? With a strong growing National Guard and 2 active duty military bases, this is an area we need to capitalize on, and there's more work to be done. I love this question. Tyler, if you're a veteran or an active duty member of our military armed forces, National Guardsman, thank you. I have some dear friends that have served in the Guard. Many have retired from the Guard. We have an armory here, so we deploy our Guardsmen and women from here. And so this is an area that I am passionate about. I think, I'm going to talk a lot about backing the blue, but I also talk a lot about backing the badge. And, for me, that includes vets. That includes members of our military and armed forces. So I would love to hear more from you. I would love to learn more. I think the thing that we can do is look at policies that will help veterans in transition. One of the companies that we recruited here, Horse Soldier Bourbon, the men that were on the ODA 595 and that fought in Afghanistan after 9/11, they love telling their story of transition. It's a real key for their company, their brand, and what they want to continue to do and promote. And so we want to work with them here in Somerset, but companies like that that will hire vets, that will, maybe we can get them back into our schools. We have a plan to ensure there's an SRO in every school in Kentucky. Veterans can be a part of that. And so it's a subject that I'm just going to say I agree with you, and I think it is worthy of further consideration. Ashley H. has a couple questions. It says, how will your plan come to life, the reform parts, while staying in your role as governor and not overreaching in the legislative branch? Now, that's the first question, then I'll get to the next one. I love this question. How will it come to life? Look, I've been told by some I'm a dreamer, and that's absolutely true. But I also have a history of being a doer, of executing things. Another synergy or similarity of local government and state government, I have a city council now. They pass a budget. They pass ordinances. I have to work alongside of them to get things done in this community. And so while I do have some bold reform, a good governor is going to work with the legislature. The Republicans have a supermajority in both chambers. We have a lot of tenured members in the General Assembly, some new. And I think, good governance is about collaboration. It's about working together. And so many of these principles for me are biblical. The Scripture says there's a wisdom in a multitude of counsel. And I understand the role of the executive branch, and I understand the role of the legislative. I think
special things can happen is when we get on the same page and work together. Ashley's next question: do you believe taxpayers should be allowed to vote if they have a past conviction? I'm going to say it depends on what the conviction is, how serious, if it was violent, and then what they have done then to get that back. So, I think if the debt to society has been paid and then there is an action step to get that right to vote back, I can support it, again, pending on what the conviction is. But I don't think that, it should just happen automatically. If you want to vote after you have, committed a crime and been convicted, then I think you should have a step. You should be able to take an action step to make sure that happens. Next question is from Johnny R. And Sue, I just saw you have a question. I'm going to try to maybe come back to that one. Also, I apologize. I know you text me and asked how to best find out when these happen, so this is a good opportunity for me to share. Is follow our Facebook page. We're going to try to remind folks when we do this. Occasionally, we're going to do it live from the road while we're traveling and talking to people across the state. When we're available, we're going to we'll be right here. Often on Thursday nights. But as things get busier and busier, and we're on the road more, we'll probably do this without the comfort of the chair. We'll probably do it from the back seat of the car and just let it rip. But follow our Facebook page, and we'll try to let you know. But the next question, and this one's been asked by a few folks. Some statewide people have asked about it, so I want to answer it for sure. It says, why is your brother getting paid from a business that doesn't exist? Well, the first thing I'll just say is it's not true. This is pertaining to the University of Somerset, our vision and the research foundation that we created. And I'll probably talk about that whole project more and more as time unfolds. But what I will say is that, that my brother is paid from a nonprofit that has no taxpayer money going toward it. Private funds have been raised for this, and zero city funds have. So beyond that, it's really nobody's business. But it's also, what people are saying is it's not a real business is not true. It does have nonprofit status. It has been an active entity as we've pursued this incredible project, which will come to fruition at some level, and I'm really excited here in a couple weeks for the world to see what that's going to look like. But, the dream was always to get kids downtown, to educate students in this region right here, to provide an avenue for them to perhaps get a degree that they couldn't in other places, and I still believe that's coming. And so some of those efforts have been towards that. Andrew S., this was a really good question. It's a complex answer, but he says, are there plans or considerations for reducing hazardous duty retirement back to 20 years, removing Tier 3 and continue on Tier 2? Any concepts or ideas on lowering the cost for municipalities? Any general ideas to help entice and improve retention among first responders? So several questions in that. I'm going to try to unpack this. Plans or considerations reducing hazardous duty back to 20? I don't think so, and here's why. The folks that are on 20 obviously need to be able to stay on that, and that promise must be kept. I recognize and appreciate the incredible work that first responders do, fire, police, EMS, others that are in that space. But people are living longer, they're working longer, and the state couldn't afford a lot of these 20-year retirements. And I don't think that we're in a position yet with our pension system to even look at going back. I think we need to continue to ensure that we make it solid, that some of these reforms that have started continue. So the second thing of that, removing Tier 3 and continuing on Tier 2, again, I'm going to pivot back to that first answer. We need to make sure that the whole thing is solvent so that the promise that we made to all our state workers can be kept. That's the first piece. Concepts or ideas are lowering the cost of municipalities. We're living that here, Andrew, big time. The city is paying nearly 50 cents on the dollar if you're in hazardous duty for every worker. And so, let's just say somebody's making $40,000. The cost to the municipality for their retirement is essentially $20,000. And it's punitive. It is hard. Because of that, we're struggling to keep up with inflation and the wage creep that we're seeing in other areas. And so I think that it is an important thing for us to continue to look at. It goes back also, though, to my plan, the Keck game plan for growth. We need more people paying into the system. We need more people living in Kentucky paying taxes so that there's not so much of a burden on the 4.5 million people that are living here. There's not so much of a burden on our municipalities. And I think that, growth will help solve a lot of these challenges. And your final question is something that we've worked on a lot, is any general ideas to help entice or improve retention among first responders? One piece is what we say and how we treat first responders really matters. We need a governor who's going to unapologetically back people who are willing to risk their life for us and strangers. And so I think that's the first piece, is what we say matters. And that's a big deal. But it also has to be word and deed. We need to support them financially where we can. Any kind of incentives for recruitment. I've said that specifically to police, can we look at raising the incentive amount or the CLEP amount that is paid. So I think wages are a component of it. Other staffing amounts, ensuring that we help folks have funding to get to proper staffing amounts where people don't get burnt out. Both of those are key, but then again, just that general message that we're thankful and that we're grateful and that this is an important job where we really need people. Kentucky needs to be a law and order state. This state should be one of the safest states in America, and unfortunately, we've been making the national news in two of our key cities for homicide and murder instead of horse racing and economic development and quality of life. Next question from Michael G. says, if you're elected governor at the end of your service in office, by which criteria would you evaluate your success? I'm gonna answer that in a couple ways. One is, again, if we're going to campaign on growth, then we have to grow. I think that is absolutely paramount. We're also talking a lot about public safety, so there's going to be certain public safety measures. Are we reducing violent crime? Are we able to help get our first responders and men and women who wear a badge more resources? Is our state generally more safe and well off in terms of public safety? Have we further protected our schools? Those are two really big ones. We also have an education pillar. I want to continue to support our teachers while adding options and make sure that we're doing better as we compare ourselves to the rest of the country on education. And then finally, are we doing what's right for Kentucky families? I've got some policies that are unique for a conservative and for a Republican about not just being pro-life in the sense that we're pro-birth, but are we helping put the right priorities in state government to promote and to push and incentivize families? And so I think that's a really big one. I've got a piece of my platform is about incentivizing businesses to extend maternity leave, and parental leave, making sure that families get off on a great start. I remember when we had Oakley, she had an eye problem. That's my middle daughter. And it was a really, really tough time. It was 9 days before a mayoral primary. And had Tiffany been forced to go back into work, after 2 weeks so that she could continue to earn money, at the time we were fortunate she didn't have to do that. Later, it would have been the case if that had been Olson. It would have been calamitous for us. And so I think there's ways for, again, state government to incentivize the behaviors we want instead of rewarding the negative behaviors that we don't. Maternity policy is one of those. I want to see us do more and make sure that Kentucky truly is the most pro-life and pro-family state in America. Next question comes from another Michael, Michael B., and it says, who will be your lieutenant governor? The answer to that is I don't know, but I won't stop there. I will say that in consideration of that, the very first criteria needs to be somebody who's capable of doing the job. Oftentimes we pick LGs for regional diversity or for gender or race diversity, and that might be smart electoral strategy. And oftentimes that diversity also brings an incredible candidate, and that may be the case here as well. But the number one qualification is somebody who can walk in and do the job, should that be needed, should I get sick, should I, have a tragedy, whatever that would be the case. The other piece is somebody that shares my values. I think that's really important, and that somebody can embrace our game plan. And, from there is somebody that I want to go to work with every day, that's going to battle and that puts people first just like I do. So I look forward to continuing that discussion and that search, but the short answer is I don't know. I just happened to look down and saw a statement. Steph, he can work security for me anytime. That's a fact. Either one of them. Seymour, go Tops. Some people checking in. I appreciate that. Next question comes from Jeff B., and it says, the GOP legislature has passed laws and common sense regulation which will produce an estimated $1.3 billion general fund surplus. As governor, what will you see as immediate funding needs and how you prioritize them? You know, again, I'm going to point you to the Keck game plan. You'll see a lot of our priorities about promoting growth, fixing our workforce crisis, which I'm going to pause today. You know, SPEDA, our Economic Development Authority, SEC, our community college, Goodwill, our local jail, created this program, let Carmel add, to train inmates so that then when they leave the jail, they can go to work. And actually, we have some that are working full-time for a local manufacturer, collecting these paychecks. They can't get the money yet because they're in jail. But when they get out of jail, they're going to have this lump sum. They can put a down payment on a house, buy a car. And so I think any of the way we invest this money truly needs to be an investment, you know, not a gimmick or a quick fix, if you will. Sorry. And so it's important that we look long-term. These surpluses might not be here forever. And it's another distinguishing point for me is the best leaders, real CEOs, understand that you have to think in months, years, decades, not days and weeks. And we've had the ability to do that here in Somerset, and I want to take some of those philosophies to state government. I would also say infrastructure is key. People want to move into communities, want to move into a state that it's safe, that the roads are good, the bridges are good. So infrastructure has to be a component of this, and it would be for us. But also funding some of these priorities in the Keck game plan, which I'd love for you all to check out. The next question, and there's several parts of it, is the one that I mentioned that was tough for me, I'll just say. And not because it was a gotcha question or that I don't want to answer it, but the individual walks through some of his concerns about mental health and talks about policies that could potentially help families as they deal with somebody that battles mental illness, and then it goes into a close family friend. And so out of respect for that family, I'm not going to answer that part specifically because I don't want even with context to drag that family down after a tragedy. But what I will say to Chris is that I'm absolutely aware of the mental health challenges and in many ways crisis that we face as a society, that we face as a country and as a state. And so I think that it's been on our radar in Somerset. We launched the Healthy Somerset Initiative, a plan to try to make Somerset the healthiest city in the state. But we did it in a holistic way, mental health, spiritual health, and then physical health, mind, body, spirit. And so we're going to take some of that same approach to state government. I do think that we can do more to help in the terms of mental illness. I also think if the state will do more, then it will help in other areas. If you talk to jailers, I can promise you that a lot of the repeat offenders, people that are back in their jail regularly, have a mental health challenge that they're not necessarily equipped or trained to deal with, but they're back in the jail anyway. And so that then creates a lot of extra costs and frustration for people who might not have that training. It doesn't mean they're not doing their job. It just means they're not equipped or trained to do that job. And so it's an issue that we have to spend a lot of time. We're going to have to bring experts in the field to the table and try to ensure that we are doing more, that we're taking some of these extra resources perhaps and committing them to facilities or to options or ideas, partnering with private companies to treat mental illness in a way that allows people to truly get better. That if you are going to counseling or therapy, that at some point hopefully that can stop or slow down, and you don't always have to do it. I'm a big believer that we can get through these valleys, if you will. Some might be longer, some might be perpetual, but I do think that we can get through them, and I think it's important that we try to train ourselves in a way to be grateful when things are good. That way, when we do hit a valley, it's easier to rebound. But I know it's real. I have members of my own family who have really struggled with it. I have been blessed that I haven't had as many challenges in this space, but I recognize so many families are dealing with it day in, day out, and it is very, very real, and we'll absolutely be focused on it in the months to come. Dave N, heck, this is a gimme. He says, how or where can I donate to your campaign? You can go to Keck for Kentucky, and there'll be an opportunity for you to donate there online, or you can send a check. We'd appreciate either one. We're grateful for any donation in any amount up to the legal limit of $2,000 here in Kentucky. And so I appreciate that question, Dave, and if you choose to support, I'd be honored and humbled. Chris B says, You seem to have experienced a lot of success in Somerset from an economic development standpoint. What are your plans and thoughts for the Commonwealth as a whole, and can Somerset be used as an example statewide? I certainly think so. I mean, we're going to tell the Somerset story. We had record economic development, Chris, in the middle of a pandemic. We have broken record after record after record in my 4 years as mayor, and I think we've done that by being collaborative. We've worked with an economic development authority called SPEDA that has really been an engine behind a lot of this. We worked with county government. We've also focused a tremendous amount on quality of life and quality of place. I'm a big believer, that Kentucky has double the quality of life for half the cost of living. And in Somerset, we're experiencing people move in from all over the country that want to be a part of this. In fact, tonight, I was speaking with a gentleman, and out of respect for his privacy, I won't say his name, but 21-year Air Force, served his country, lived in California, and they wanted to retire here. They loved the safety component. They loved the quality of life, and they're thrilled here. They were at the tree lighting tonight. And so I think there's more of that. I think Kentucky can tell its story and be really proud of who we are and start to take some of these ideas of selling that, not necessarily chasing smokestacks, but selling who we are as a people and what we are as a state. The other thing I would say to Chris is that, it's got to really be a focal point that's beyond new jobs, but how do we fill the ones that we already have? Again, you've heard me say it, you're going to hear me say a lot, we've got a workforce crisis. Well, we don't get to shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's a problem all over the country. Oh, well, we got to do something about it. In the last several years, Kentucky has been in the bottom 5, even as low as 49th in workforce participation. I appreciate the work the state chamber is doing to help solve that, but the governor needs to do more. And, by paying people $300 to stay at home when surrounding states wouldn't, accepting that federal subsidy, that's bad policy. And it created bad habits for people. By not fighting in Washington, which he's not going to do, to reduce the amount of welfare for those that aren't doing anything, that aren't working, we need to shift that money. We need public assistance reform, welfare reform, to help the working poor. Those that are working 2 jobs and still struggling to get by deserve a little help, not those who are able-bodied and not working at all. And so if you're able-bodied in Kentucky and Alan Keck's the governor, you're going to work. And I think that is a critical component of our economic development plan. If you can't tell, I get a little passionate about some of these issues. That's one of them. The next question comes from Courtney G. And the question is, Kentucky has made some progress in the realm of adoption and foster care, but we have a long way to go. What are your thoughts and plans on how to improve the system in Kentucky to help out some of our most vulnerable? I love that question, and I absolutely agree. Scripture says that we need to do all we can for orphans and widows. I think that the spirit of that Scripture also absolutely talks to those that have a heart for adoption and foster care. My stepsister and her family they just got fortunate enough, they were fostering and then now are able to adopt some other dear friends, some that I've actually texted and talked with tonight. Both have lived that, and I'm thankful for those that have. It's something that Tiffany and I are praying about. We haven't done that yet. We're focused on R3, but I think it's something that we're certainly going to evaluate. This is an area where governmental red tape, the challenges of the judiciary at times can really get in the way. What I would say to this holistically is we need to do more to make it easier while still protecting the safety and the rights of the child and the family. We need to make it more cost effective. And then again, I'm a big believer that there are ways we can incentivize. Could we up the ante on child care credits or rebates for those that are willing to foster or adopt? Can we do things like eliminating the sales tax on needs for young children, diapers, wipes, baby formula, so that those that might still be struggling, even with incentives, to afford to adopt or foster, can we get rid of those types of punitive taxes? I think the answer is yes. And again, I think it goes back to priorities. One of the questions that will be asked is, well, how do you fund it? Again, 1, you grow, but 2, you commit to what you believe in. If family is actually a priority, then we'll find the money for that first, and then we'll figure out other cuts to make later. I appreciate that question. I appreciate your heart for it, and I agree that we need to do more, and this is an opportunity for us to do more and to work together. I think that's another area where working with the legislature is key, but also those that have been in the space, that have lived it, and that understand some of the challenges of navigating it. That's actually, I worked through those a little quicker than I thought. So I'm gonna go to the live stream here and grab a couple. I appreciate some of these comments. I'm scrolling. I've read so much today. My eyes are hurting me a little bit. I apologize for the squinting. And I appreciate that, JW. Y'all are kind. Okay, I'm trying to get to a question. I'm not seeing them. Maybe I'm missing some. What will Kentucky do? Here's one. What will Kentucky do in the next pandemic if there's another? Stay open. I'll say this: we're gonna do a focus on our COVID response, how we led during the existing or the old pandemic, the COVID pandemic. I think that it's key that we learn from that one, and that we also understand that there are times where we don't make decisions in a vacuum. And while we worked so hard to keep people safe, some of the blowback consequences were we ruined livelihoods, and we actually ended up inflicting an incredible amount of harm as a result. My very first comments, public comments during COVID were about parallel paths, that we absolutely had to do everything we could to keep folks safe, but we couldn't do it while destroying their livelihoods. And I felt convicted about it because I heard from so many small business owners, many of them single moms. I heard from a lot of beauticians. They couldn't go to work, and they're saying, how are we going to survive? How are we going to make a living? And then you saw the fiasco with certain people getting unemployment and others not. And so I think it's key. That's a broad question. It's a good question. I think my philosophy would be we got to protect the rights of those while also doing everything we can for public safety. We should have learned a lot. We also have to adapt. We learned a lot in the first several weeks of COVID about how deadly it was and about who was affected, and we didn't adapt quick enough. And I think that's one key, is to not get stubborn, continue to listen to the experts, and then adapt and make changes. Sue asked a question. You've stated you're pro-life. Do you support any exceptions? What I'm going to say to that is it can make the subject even more divisive, but it's a fair question. And I'm going to answer it from the heart. I am pro-life, absolutely. And I also understand, though, that there are instances, they're very rare, but there are instances where the life of the mom might be at risk, and we need to make sure that we protect those women in that situation. And the other one is, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, it's an area that's not black and white, it's not easy, but it is the issue of, when there's a violent crime that forces that pregnancy on a woman. And this is a part that I want to be really clear on. I think at that level, there needs to be protections for the mom. Now, in saying that, that doesn't mean that I would ever encourage the abortion. That's not the case. And so I think it's there's no winner in that terrible situation, in that tragedy. There's no good solution, but I do think that option needs to exist in that rare occasion. And look, it does happen. I don't think that should be an indefinite window, but also I think that we need to be sensitive that in that time of trauma that, there needs to be some time to make a decision. So I would never encourage the abortion in that sense, but I do think that option needs to be there. Somebody said, hoping you answer, but I don't know. Oh, maybe that was I got to one of them, Sue. I don't know that I saw the other one. I'm sorry. I'm going to take one or two more. I'm just scrolling until I see them, y'all. Just crossed over the youngster wanting to work security for me. Somebody's hitting love, but showing angry. Sorry about that. Oh, JD. All right, I'm going to tackle two. Sue said something about presidential candidates. I don't actually. The field hasn't unfolded. I don't know exactly what that field's going to look like. My focus right now is on Somerset and the rest of Kentucky. I'm a big believer in states' rights. Whoever that person is, if I'm governor, we're going to have to work with. But no presidential candidate is going to come in and save Kentucky. And I think that whoever is elected next governor is going to have to work with our legislature, work with our communities, work with our people, and solve some of these generational problems. And so while it's a critical election in many ways, my focus is right here at home. And I'm going to continue to maintain that and focus on my vision, the Keck game plan, ideas that will move Kentucky forward. JD says, okay, this is a good one to end on. If you all submit more, again, go to keckforkentucky.com, submit questions. I'm going to do everything I can to get to all of these. As it stands right now, I'm the only person in this race, quite frankly, the only person I've seen do this almost at any level, where we're coming to you, we're answering your questions, the hard ones that are going to try to put me in a box, give sound bites. But JD left me with a fun one. He's with two great mayors, Mayor J-Town, Mayor Auburn, Bill Dourif, and Mike Hughes. Who's the better mayor? You know, they're really different cities. I think this sort of speaks to the magic of municipal government, is both of them somehow are tolerating you tonight, JD. So they both deserve a point in the pro column for that. Mike was the first one to ever, really befriend me at the League of Cities. I mean, he kind of mentored me a little bit. But, Dourif's kicked a lot of butt. He supports law enforcement. He's put himself out there a lot. Who's the better mayor? Man, I can't do cop-outs. I don't know. I'm going to answer that one later. I'm going to digest that one a little bit and answer it later, but I love them both. They're great in their own right. And again, you owe them a drink for having to sit with you while you listen to this. Hopefully I didn't put y'all asleep. But let me just close by saying we're going to try to really enjoy this process. I think that we have too many politicians that live in a glass house that want to control every environment they're in, that want to answer only the questions that they think will work or will help them. And we have another group that'll tell people exactly what they want to hear, depending on who's in the room. And that's not going to be me. Again, it's liberating just to be able to speak your mind, do so blunt, but also hopefully in a way that is kind, that can be a model for others, that even when you disagree, doesn't mean you have to hate each other, doesn't mean you have to fight about it. There are times on principle that you do have to stand firm and do so with passion and conviction, and we'll do that. Again, I'm unapologetically pro-life, but every situation in that doesn't necessarily mean it's black and white. And so we're gonna keep doing this. We're gonna be very active. I hope that you'll encourage others. If you like what you've seen or heard, share these. Share our launch video. We talked for 20 minutes that night about the Keck game plan, about my past, why I'm prepared, why I'm ready to take on this challenge, how we can move Kentucky forward, how we can listen to the constituents of our great Commonwealth and make it the absolute best version that it can be. And so I'm excited about it. I'm excited to continue to serve my hometown and the people that I love here, but also to travel this state and to spend time with people that I know care deeply about its future, about their family and their opportunities here as we move forward. And so I hope you'll stay tuned in. I hope if you like what you're hearing, you'll choose to get involved. Time, talent, treasure. Help us in any way you can. And I look forward to talking to you all and seeing you all soon. Have a blessed night. Chat soon.